They didn't mean to discover it. When they brought you into that cold room, with the fluorescent lights humming and the biometric scanners warming up, the officers thought this was a standard evaluation. A routine scan. A simple reading of vitals, frequencies, and stress markers. But the moment your body touched the sensor plate, everything changed. The machines didn't read your heartbeat. They projected your timeline. Not who you are, but who you are about to become. The lead technician froze. An alarm didn't go off. The opposite happened. Every screen in the room went silent, then lit up with a pattern no one had ever seen. A bright arc. A rising line. A moving silhouette. A signature that didn't match any human classification in the database. "What is this?" someone whispered. "This isn't a health scan," the commander said quietly. His voice cracked. "This is a future projection." They checked the cables, rebooted the system, swapped the sensors, but every time your body was scanned, the same impossible pattern appeared. They weren't detecting illness. They weren't detecting instability. They weren't detecting threat. They were detecting destiny. A future written before you were born. A future that echoes Jeremiah 1 verse 5. "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." The military didn't discover a glitch. They discovered a prophecy. And it has your name written across the screen. Military-grade biometric scanners are designed to read one thing: data, heart rate, temperature, stress response, neural activity, electromagnetic patterns. Everything measurable, everything predictable. But when they scanned you, the system produced something that doesn't belong in a medical or tactical report. Instead of your normal human data, the machine generated something resembling a timeline trajectory, a pattern that doesn't appear in healthy individuals, sick individuals, or even enhanced soldiers. Your scan didn't map your condition, it mapped your potential. Standard tests analyzed the present. Yours revealed the future. This happened because your energy signature doesn't behave like the others processed through the system. Most people register stable, flat output. You produced a rising waveform with irregular spikes that correspond more to decision points, life pivots, and identity acceleration curves than physiological metric. In simple terms, the scanner didn't read your body. It tried to interpret your destiny. The military technicians initially assumed the machine was malfunctioning. But when they ran control tests with multiple personnel and then rescanned you, the anomaly returned with the same precision. This is the part they won't admit publicly. Certain individuals carry a field strong enough to interfere with time-based sensors. These devices can detect micropatterns in neural frequencies, and yours showed signs of pretemporal sensitivity. Most people move through time. You move in a way that time reacts to you. This is why the machines didn't behave normally. Sensors couldn't classify you, so they tried to predict you. And the result matched something they have only seen in classified theoretical studies: a human being whose timeline radiates outward instead of forward. Not an ordinary scan, but a signal. Not a reading, but a projection. Not a profile, but a future. When the scan completed, the technicians expected the usual readouts: organ condition, neural stress, electromagnetic balance. Instead, the screen displayed a moving graph that none of the operators were trained to interpret. The line wasn't flat, curved, or oscillating like a biological rhythm. It moved upward, sharply, then stabilized into a pattern resembling a trajectory index, a metric used only in predictive simulations, not inhuman diagnostic. At first, the team assumed it was a software glitch. They ran a calibration. They restarted the machine. They changed the sensor pad. But when the second scan produced the exact same projection, the room shifted from confusion to concern. The spikes in the graph were especially troubling. They weren't random. They appeared in perfect intervals that matched the signature commonly seen in future event modeling, the type of analytical process used in classified scenario prediction systems. This wasn't supposed to show up in a human scan. The military uses predictive waveform analysis to anticipate battlefield outcomes, not to analyze individuals. Yet the machine interpreted your body as if you were an upcoming event, not a present one. A corporal attempted to dismiss it as electromagnetic interference, but the senior analyst disagreed. He pointed out that the waveform was too structured, too intentional, too consistent to be noise. He noted that your scan produced what they call a future trajectory line, a pattern that normally requires satellite-level AI to generate. No health system should have been capable of producing such an output. And yet here it was, repeating, stabilizing, confirming itself. The silent conclusion in the room was simple. This isn't showing who they are. It's showing who they're going to become. They didn't witness a malfunction. They witnessed a forecast. And it terrified them because the pattern suggested one thing: your timeline isn't following you. It's pulling you forward. The question that circulated among the analysts afterward was simple but unsettling. Why was your future visible at all? Military-grade scanners are not designed to reveal timelines. They detect patterns in the present, not projections of what comes next. Yet your scan behaved as if it was interacting with something beyond ordinary biological processes. The internal report concluded that your signature does not operate inside a typical chronological framework. In technical terms, your energy field didn't appear to be moving through time. Instead, the data showed that your field behaves like a central axis and time moves around you. This is why the scan produced a predictive trajectory. The system interpreted your presence as a fixed point around which future conditions were already forming. In other words, your future is structured strongly enough to appear in the present. Analysts theorized that certain individuals carry what they call temporal density, a kind of spiritual or energetic pressure strong enough to distort how sensors read linear time. When this density is high, the future becomes partially visible because it has already begun to manifest. This aligns with a classified hypothesis rarely discussed outside of internal circles. Some people are born with a predetermined impact so significant that their future casts a shadow backward into the present. You are one of those anomalies. Your timeline isn't fluid or uncertain like most people's. It's anchored, pre-written, already moving toward fulfillment. This is why the scan didn't show your condition, it showed your calling. The machine detected the momentum of your destiny, not the metrics of your biology. What the military saw wasn't an error. It was inevitability. And that realization changed the way they viewed you from that moment forward. After the anomalous scan, the technicians escalated the incident to a restricted division known internally as Temporal Analysis Unit, TU. This division typically investigates time distortion phenomena detected in satellite feeds, quantum experiments, or classified aerospace tests. They do not analyze civilians. Yet your file was transferred to them within minutes. The moment you opened your scan results, they created a new classification label: Temporal Anomaly, Human Origin. This label had never been used before. Your file was then placed inside a secure archive alongside a handful of theoretical cases that were previously only discussed in simulations. What stood out was a set of images generated from your scan, visual projections normally reserved for strategic forecasting tools. Instead of showing medical imagery, the system displayed silhouettes, movement trails, and a radiating glow around what appeared to be your future self. One analyst described it in the report. The subject's projected form emits structured light patterns consistent with destiny acceleration signatures. Another noted that your simulation frames carried leadership trajectory markers, indicators usually associated with individuals destined to alter geopolitical or societal landscape. The deeper they went, the more the data shifted from analysis to reverence. The report even mentions an internal disagreement. Some officers insisted the projections were technological misreads, but others argued that such coherent patterns don't come from machines. They come from purpose. By the end of the review, your file was stamped with a status typically reserved for artifacts, not people. Do not delete. Future relevant asset. They weren't tracking your present. They were archiving your future. And they had no protocol for handling someone whose destiny appeared before they did. Inside the internal assessment, one detail stood out more than the data itself. The analysts noticed that the scan results resembled patterns seen in prophetic literature, not in military archives. They don't use religious language in official reports, but the terminology they chose was unusually symbolic. Phrases like pre-written trajectory, origin point clarity, end before beginning imprint. These expressions have no technical meaning in their system, yet they mirror a concept that has existed for thousands of years: the future written before the present. Scripture has been describing this phenomenon long before sensors and algorithms existed. Isaiah 46 verse 10 states, "I declare the end from the beginning." In other words, destiny appears at the start, not the finish. This is exactly what your scan showed, an endpoint visible before the journey unfolds. Another verse, Psalm 139 verse 16, says, "All the days ordained for me were written before one came to be." The military saw a version of this in numerical form, a future trajectory line already formed, already stable, already activated. Your scan didn't reveal speculation. It revealed something already written. The classified team tried interpreting your results through physics, time dilation, predictive fields, probability arc, but none of their models fully explained why your pattern appeared complete. The logic was uncomfortable but undeniable. The system didn't predict your future. It recognized something predetermined. In their language, it was a temporal anomaly. In Scripture's language, it was purpose. For the military, this was a disruption. For heaven, it was a confirmation. They detected what God had already authored. And that is why your scan will never fit into their scientific frameworks, because it wasn't measuring biology. It was echoing prophecy. At this point in the story, the military report stops being a document and becomes a mirror. Once a future is detected in someone's scan, that person is no longer considered ordinary. A trajectory signature like yours forces a shift in how analysts classify a human being. But it should also create a shift in how you classify yourself. When a future becomes visible in the present, The individual must decide whether they walk into it consciously or drift into it accidentally. That choice is what defines alignment. This is why the message transitions here from information to invitation. People whose timelines accelerate, whose presence disrupts sensors, whose destiny shows up before they do, they're not supposed to navigate this alone. They move best in environments where others are awake, aware, and aligned with higher purpose. The first chosen one's community exists for that reason. It gathers individuals whose inner identity is already activating, whose future is already forming, and whose path is shifting faster than the world expects. Joining isn't about status or perks. It's about recognizing your place among people who operate differently, people who sense timelines before they unfold, who feel purpose tightening around them, who know they were built for more than routine life. When something in a viewer resonates deeply with a message like this, it's usually because their own trajectory is awakening. The join button becomes a doorway, not a feature. It's a moment of claiming your alignment rather than spectating it. If you feel that internal pull, subtle, steady, unmistakable, then stepping into the first chosen one circle is the next logical move. It's not a subscription. It's a declaration that you are walking with intention toward the future that has already begun revealing itself. Once the scan incident concluded, the personnel expected you to walk out unaffected, the same way every other subject does. But that's not what happened. Individuals whose scans reveal ordinary biological data leave the room unchanged. In your case, the aftermath became part of the anomaly itself. Several physical responses were recorded, responses the medical team couldn't categorize within normal physiological parameters. The first noticeable sign was heat distribution. People usually cool down after stepping off a scanner, but you experience the opposite. An increase in core temperature and a warm pressure through the chest area. This type of heat spike typically appears during high adrenaline events, not during passive analysis. The report stated that the rise was internally sourced, meaning it didn't come from stress or environment, it came from activation. The second observation involved neurological sensitivity. You reported a tingling sensation in the hands and forearms, something the technicians initially dismissed until they observed micro-movements consistent with heightened electrical flow in the peripheral nervous system. This isn't common unless someone is undergoing a rapid cognitive shift or processing large internal stimuli. Then there was the change in your eyes. Multiple officers noted increased brightness in the iris, described in the report as reflective intensity. This isn't a medical condition. It's a sign of elevated focus or heightened awareness, similar to what happens to elite soldiers in decisive moments, but stronger. The final indicator was behavioral. You paused before stepping out of the room. Most people leave immediately. You stood still, as if your senses were recalibrating. The military described it as a post-scan alignment response, something they've only seen in subjects exposed to classified cognitive programming, not in someone who simply underwent a biometric test. These reactions confirmed what the scan already suggested. The device didn't just detect your future, it triggered something inside you. After the scan, something subtle began happening around you, something the military noticed before you did. People responded to you differently, not because of what you said or did, but because your presence shifted. When a person carries a visible future signature, others pick up on it instinctively, even if they can't explain why. This phenomenon is documented in classified behavioral report. Soldiers described feeling a pressure change when you entered the room, similar to what they experience around high-ranking commanders or individuals with mission-critical authority. It wasn't intimidation. It was recognition, an unconscious response to someone whose future already carries weight. Civilians experience it too, though in more subtle ways. Some people glance at you longer than usual, trying to place a feeling they don't understand. Others grow unusually respectful or cautious around you. Certain individuals, especially empaths or highly intuitive personalities, may even withdraw slightly, sensing that your trajectory puts you on a path beyond their comprehension. None of this is personal. It's energetic pattern detection. The military has language for this: presence displacement. It describes individuals who shift the emotional structure of a room simply by being in it. When your scan revealed a future-oriented signature, it confirmed why people have always reacted to you this way. They're not responding to your present identity. They're responding to the future version of you that is already forming. This explains moments in your life where strangers respected you without reason, friends seemed to look at you differently after certain events, or groups adjusted themselves when you walked near. They were sensing a timeline stronger than the moment. People don't just see you. They feel who you're becoming. When the military realized your scan wasn't showing biological data but a future trajectory, their interpretation shifted from medical to strategic. In classified environments, whenever a future appears before the present, it is treated not as coincidence but as assignment potential. They don't ask, "What is happening?" They ask, "What is this person being prepared for?" That's the category your profile was moved into. The analysts concluded that your future signature was not passive. It showed acceleration curves, decision markers, and influence spikes typically associated with individuals who impact systems, not those who simply operate inside them. This is why they rewrote your classification. They weren't seeing random predictions. They were seeing indicators of a person whose life is structured around purpose activation. You need to understand how rare this is. Most people's futures are fluid, unstable, undefined. That's why standard scans always show static lines. But yours was stable and directional. Stability in future projection means the path ahead is not being formed by random choices. It's being pulled by a pre-written outcome. In military terms, this is called a defined mission arc. This is why your scan alarmed them. Not because it showed danger, but because it showed inevitability. Something in your life is converging. Something is forming. Something has already been set into motion long before you realized it. This isn't about luck or potential. This is about calling, the kind of destiny that forces itself into the present because the timeline can't wait for you to figure it out. You are not walking toward the future like everyone else. The future is moving toward you, accelerating to meet its appointed moment. This is mission energy, mission timing, mission identity. Up to this point, everything you've learned has come from observation, data, classified interpretation, and the unmistakable indicators surrounding your scan. But information alone doesn't activate anything. Recognition must turn into response. In environments where future signatures are detected, there is always a moment where the individual acknowledges what has been revealed. That moment becomes the marker that separates awareness from alignment. This part of the message is exactly that, a point of personal confirmation. If your scan had been ordinary, nothing here would matter. If your future weren't already visible, none of this would apply. But when a timeline shows up early, when destiny forces itself into the present, it requires a deliberate signal that you are not ignoring it. For viewers whose spirit is resonating with this message, the Super Thanks button becomes that signal. Not a donation, not a transaction, a symbol, a public acknowledgement that says, I accept the trajectory that has already begun forming around me. The amount, $20, is symbolic, not financial. It represents a seed, a marker, a declaration that you are stepping into alignment with the future that both heaven authored and the military accidentally detected. Seeds don't disappear, they transform. They leave your hand and enter your timeline. This isn't about buying something. It's about anchoring something. When you click Super Thanks and place your $20 seed, you are stamping this moment as the point where your awareness met your assignment. You're saying, I'm not running from this. I'm stepping into it. If your internal compass is pulling you toward this, calmly, quietly, unmistakably, then honor that pull. Seal your trajectory. Mark this moment. Activate alignment. Once analysts realized your scan was displaying a stable future signature, they had to redefine how they categorized you. Their existing frameworks weren't built for someone whose timeline behaves independently from the present moment. In simple terms, they couldn't label you as an ordinary civilian, subject, or even anomaly. You didn't fit any category they had. So they created one. Internally, the term used in the notes was temporal chosen. It wasn't meant as a dramatic title. It was a functional classification for an individual whose future exerts measurable influence on the present. In other words, someone who carries destiny pressure. This explains the patterns in your life that never made sense until now. It explains why certain opportunities seem to appear out of nowhere, why people treated you with an unusual level of respect or caution, why you often felt out of sync with your surroundings, not behind but ahead. Individuals with temporal density tend to think, feel, and evolve faster than their environment, which can create a sense of internal dislocation. But now there is context. Your scan revealed what has been true internally for years. You don't move through time like other people. Time adjusts to you. This is why the military systems reacted the way they did. Their technology wasn't designed to analyze someone whose identity is tied to a pre-written mission. Sensors can measure biology. Algorithms can map behavior. But neither can fully interpret a destiny. That's why the scan didn't show your body. It showed your impact. It showed the silhouette of who you're becoming. It showed the force of a life that has already been authored. Being temporal chosen doesn't make you superior. It makes you responsible. It means your future isn't speculative, it's structured. And the world is already responding to it. Now that the scan has revealed a visible future trajectory, the next stage is observation. Individuals with temporal signatures like yours begin to experience specific markers in their daily life. Signs that the future is no longer distant but already interacting with the present. These signs are not supernatural in appearance, yet they are impossible to dismiss once you understand what they represent. 1. Dreams that accelerate into reality. You'll notice that certain dreams stop feeling symbolic and start manifesting quickly, sometimes within days. You may see conversations, rooms, or decisions appear in real life exactly as they appeared at night. This is a classic indicator that your timeline is syncing. 2. Déjà vu occurring at abnormal frequency. Most people experience déjà vu occasionally. For temporal anomalies, it happens more often and with deeper emotional impact. You'll feel the moment as if you're stepping into something pre-recorded, not merely familiar. 3. Anticipation of events before they surface. You will begin sensing outcomes before they unfold. Who will call, what decisions someone will make, what direction a situation is heading. These aren't guesses. They're reflections of a future that's already partially anchored. 4. Heightened awareness around key individuals. You may feel an unusual connection or caution around certain people. This is your internal trajectory detecting who belongs in your future and who doesn't. 5. Rapid shifts in your environment. When destiny accelerates, life rearranges itself. Opportunities appear unexpectedly. Certain habits fall away. Certain relationships shift or end. These transitions aren't disruptions, they're alignment. 6. Moments of clarity that feel disproportionate. You'll have sudden insights that normally take years to develop. This is your future self echoing backward, guiding you into the person you are becoming. When these signs appear, don't question them. They're not coincidences. They're confirmations. They're evidence that the future the military saw is already reaching into your present. Now the final steps. Type Amen. This is your agreement, a clear signal that you accept what was revealed. Click Join. This connects you with the first chosen ones, the people who walk with awareness and identity instead of confusion and randomness. Click Super Thanks and place your $20 seed. This is the moment you mark your acceptance. I acknowledge the timeline that has already begun. The seed is symbolic, not payment but alignment. It doesn't leave your life, it enters your future. Your future isn't distant anymore. It touched the present in that scan. And this is the action that seals it.